AITA for refusing to pay for the party after my mom said I didn't make our family proud? I'm Anna, 34, and being the oldest daughter in my family has always felt less like a birth order and more like an unpaid subscription nobody asked if I wanted to renew. My mom, Linda, has spent my whole adult life polishing my younger brother Brandon like he's the family trophy, while I'm the person she calls when the trophy drops, cracks, or forgets to pay a bill. Brandon is 29, charming in that easy way that works best on people who don't read the fine print. He always had the loud laugh, the better excuses, the big plans. Mom called him ambitious when he quit things, sensitive when he snapped at people, and still figuring it out when his rent, car insurance, or half of a family expense somehow became everyone else's problem. With me it was different. If Brandon remembered one errand, Mom acted like he'd built a hospital. If I handled a crisis quietly, she said, "You're the oldest. That's what you do." If Brandon brought Mom grocery store flowers, she posted them on Facebook with 3 heart emojis and a caption about being blessed. If I paid the deposit for the family holiday dinner because she forgot the deadline, she told me not to mention money because it makes people uncomfortable. For years, I let it happen because I thought calmness would eventually be rewarded. I thought if I stayed useful and didn't embarrass anyone, Mom would finally stop treating my help like air. I wasn't looking for a parade. I just wanted to be seen without having to hold a receipt up to someone's face. The sad part is I had the receipts. I'm the type of person who saves screenshots in folders, keeps invoices in old grocery envelopes, and names files things like Mom June transfer and Brandon car repair promise. Not because I was planning some dramatic takedown. I just learned early that in my family, the person who remembers what happened gets called dramatic, while the person who rewrites it gets called hurt. Our family group chat was basically Mom's little stage. She used it to post filtered pictures, birthday messages, prayer hands, and passive-aggressive announcements that always sounded sweet until you realized who they were aimed at. Brandon makes us proud every day. Some people understand family loyalty without needing credit. Grateful for children who show up with love, not attitude. Whenever she needed something though, my private messages lit up. "Anna, can you Zelle me $600 until Friday? Brandon's check is delayed. Please don't tell your aunt. She worries. Can you cover the catering deposit? I'll explain later. Don't make me beg in front of everyone." And my favorite, sent at 11:42 p.m. one night after Brandon had apparently miscalculated his utilities for the 3rd time. "You know how your brother is. He just needs support, not judgment." Support usually meant money. Judgment meant asking when I'd get it back. So when Brandon got engaged to Melissa, I already knew what was coming. Melissa was 28, polite, pretty, and careful in the way people are when they've been warned about someone before meeting them. The first few times I talked to her, she smiled like she was waiting for me to prove something. Not rude exactly, just guarded. At one family dinner, I mentioned a restaurant because I'd spoken with them about the engagement dinner menu. Melissa blinked and said, "Oh, you're involved with that?" Before I could answer, Mom cut in from across the table. "Anna likes to keep track of details," she said, waving her hand like I had a clipboard addiction. "Brandon is handling the real planning. We're just helping where needed." Brandon gave a short laugh and looked down at his phone. Melissa's smile tightened. "Brandon said you two have always been competitive." I looked at him. He didn't look back. "Competitive?" I repeated. Mom jumped in again. "Oh, not in a bad way. Families have dynamics. Anna is older, so sometimes she feels things more deeply." That was Mom's gift. She could insult you with the voice of a woman offering you tea. I didn't push it then. I should have, but I was still in my old pattern. Observe, swallow, fix, move on. And honestly, I wanted the engagement dinner to be nice. Melissa had done nothing to me. She was marrying into a family that treated image like oxygen, and I already felt sorry for her even before I understood why. The dinner was supposed to be small but polished. That was Mom's word. Polished. Not fun, not warm, not meaningful. Polished. She talked about it for weeks like Brandon was hosting a royal event. "My son is taking care of everything like a real grown man," she told relatives in the group chat. "He wants his fiancée welcomed properly," she wrote under a picture of Brandon and Melissa standing in front of someone else's fireplace. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. Behind the scenes, it was a different story. The first message came about a month before the dinner. Anna, quick question. The venue needs a deposit today, and Brandon is tied up. Can you put it down and I'll have him send it back? I stared at the message for a long time before answering. How much? $1,200. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's temporary. Please don't make this a whole thing. That last sentence should have been my warning label. I paid it. A week later, the caterer needed another payment because Mom had added 2 appetizers after telling everyone Brandon wanted a more elevated menu. That was $850. Then there were flowers, printed menu cards, and a last-minute service adjustment because Mom didn't like the original seating arrangement. Another $430. Each time Mom promised it was temporary. Each time Brandon texted some version of, "I'll pay you back after the dinner. Everything's moving around right now." Everything was always moving around. Money moved from me to them, promises moved from specific to vague, and credit moved straight to Brandon. 3 days before the dinner, Mom called me instead of texting. She did that when she wanted plausible deniability. "Anna," she said, using the soft voice she saved for asking favors, "I need you not to react. That's never a good opening. The venue has a final balance." I thought Brandon handled it, but there was confusion. How much confusion? She sighed like I was hurting her by asking math to exist. $2,000. I closed my eyes. "Mom, I know, but it's Brandon's engagement dinner. Melissa's family will be there. Your uncles, Rachel, everyone. This is not the time to embarrass him. He embarrassed himself if he booked something he couldn't pay for. Don't start." "I'm not starting. I'm stating a fact." "You're his sister," she said. "Please, let him have this night. Let us look like a normal family for once." That sentence hit me in a place I didn't like admitting still existed. A normal family. I had spent years trying to buy us closer to one. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked. "Just authorize the payment. It won't process until after the event. Brandon said he has money coming in, so we'll cover it before then. I just need the card on file so nothing gets canceled." "And nobody is telling Melissa?" Mom went quiet. "Mom, this isn't her burden. She doesn't need stress before her own engagement dinner." That sounds like a Brandon conversation, not a Melissa burden. "Anna, please don't bring money up tonight. Let Brandon have this." I should have said no. I know that now. But at the time, it felt like saying no would turn me into the villain Mom had already been describing. So I logged into the payment portal from my phone, entered my card, and set up the final balance. The confirmation email came through a minute later. Final payment scheduled. Authorization pending until close of event. I saved it to my folder because of course I did. On the day of the dinner, I arrived 10 minutes early. The room looked beautiful in that expensive, slightly stiff way Mom loved. White tablecloths, gold-rimmed plates, small folded name cards, tall floral centerpieces that made it hard to talk across the table. A little framed sign near the entrance said Brandon and Melissa, in looping script. For one second, I actually thought maybe tonight could be normal. I noticed all the little things I had paid for. The extra appetizer station near the bar, the printed menus Mom had claimed were Brandon's idea, the upgraded flowers, the soft lighting, and the table near the front reserved for immediate family. I walked over to the seating chart. Mom and Brandon were at the family table, of course. Melissa, her parents, our aunt and uncle, Rachel, 2 older relatives Mom liked to impress. I scanned for my name. Nothing. I checked again, slower. Then I found it. Anna. Table 7. Back corner near the side door with distant cousins, one of Brandon's old co-workers, and a woman I'd met once at a barbecue 8 years ago. First, I told myself it was a mistake. A stupid mistake, but still a mistake. I picked up my name card from the back table and walked toward Mom, who was rearranging napkins that didn't need rearranging. "Mom," I said quietly, "I think there's an issue with the seating chart." She turned, saw the card in my hand, and her face changed. Not surprise. Not confusion. Annoyance. That was when I knew. A few relatives were nearby, pretending not to listen. Brandon stood a few feet away with Melissa, one hand in his pocket, laughing too loudly at something nobody had said. Mom reached out and took the name card from my hand. "There's no issue," she said. I kept my voice low. "Why am I not at the family table?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Anna, don't make this awkward. I'm asking a simple question. And I'm giving you a simple answer. Tonight is about Brandon and Melissa. The main table is for people who represent the family well." The room didn't go silent, not exactly. Rooms like that don't go silent all at once. They dim. Conversations soften. Forks pause. People look down at their drinks like the ice just became fascinating. I looked at her. "What does that mean?" Mom lifted the little folded card between two fingers, like it was evidence against me. "It means this table is for people who make us proud." I felt heat rise up my neck, but my face stayed still. That surprised even me. Brandon heard it. I know he did because his laugh stopped. Melissa looked from Mom to me, confused and embarrassed. "Linda." Mom turned to her with that perfect hostess smile. "It's fine, sweetheart. Anna just gets sensitive about seating. Weddings bring up emotions." "It's an engagement dinner," I said. Brandon finally spoke. "Can we not do this right now?" I looked at him. Not angry yet. Not outwardly. Just giving him one clean chance. He looked at my name card, then at Mom, then at his phone. "Seriously, Anna," he muttered. "Nobody asked you to make it a big thing." There it was. Not just silence. Participation. Mom stepped closer and lowered her voice, but not enough. "Go sit down. Don't punish your brother because you're unhappy with your own choices." I could have said so many things. I could have told every person within earshot that the appetizers in their hands were paid for by the daughter, who apparently didn't represent the family well. I could have held up the email. I could have asked Brandon whether his fiancée knew that handling it meant waiting for his sister's card to clear. Instead, I smiled. Not because I was calm, because I had crossed some invisible line inside myself, and on the other side, anger felt cold. "You're right," I said. "Tonight shouldn't be awkward." Mom looked relieved, which almost made me laugh. I took my name card back, walked to table 7, set it down and placed my purse on the chair. Then I excused myself to the hallway. The hallway outside the dining room was narrow and dim, with framed black and white pictures on the wall and muffled music leaking through the doors. I stood near a decorative plant that had seen better days and opened my email. Final payment scheduled. Authorization pending until close of event. I clicked the vendor portal link. My hands were shaking, but not enough to stop me. The page loaded slowly, as if even the internet wanted me to reconsider. Balance due. Payment method saved. Status. Pending authorization. There was a button near the bottom. Cancel scheduled payment. I stared at it for maybe 10 seconds. Then I thought about Mom holding my name card like I'd snuck into a room I didn't deserve. I thought about Brandon looking at his phone while I waited for him to be decent. I thought about Melissa being told I was competitive, jealous, difficult, emotional. I thought about every just this once that had turned into a family policy. If I didn't belong at the table, my money didn't belong under it. I tapped cancel. A confirmation popped up. "Are you sure?" For the first time all night I tapped again. Scheduled payment canceled. I took a screenshot. Then another. Then I forwarded the confirmation to myself and saved it in the folder with all the others. While I was there, I started scrolling through old messages. Not because I needed proof. I already had proof. I think I needed to remind myself I wasn't crazy. That was when I saw an older text from Mom from about 2 months before. "Do not mention the debt thing to Melissa. Brandon is already embarrassed." At the time, I had been in the middle of a workday and didn't think much about it. Mom had said Brandon got behind on family-related expenses, and I sent money because she made it sound like something urgent with shared relatives. But standing in that hallway, after watching Melissa's confused face, the message landed differently. I searched Brandon's name in my bank app, then Mom's, then the amounts. $700, $450, $1,100. Temporary. Emergency. Family help. Except some of it lined up with texts from Brandon about his personal situation, his credit mess, and one message where he wrote, "Please don't tell Melissa. She thinks I already cleared that." My stomach tightened. They hadn't just been using me to make the family look good. They had been using my money to keep Melissa from seeing what she was marrying into. I stood there until my breathing slowed. Then I opened my notes app and started a timeline. Venue deposit, paid by me. Catering adjustment, paid by me. Menu cards and flowers, paid by me. Final venue balance, canceled after public seating insult. Debt-related transfers, review messages. I wasn't going to be the loudest person. I was going to be the clearest one. When I went back inside, Mom was posing with Brandon and Melissa near the flowers. Brandon had his arm around Melissa, smiling like a man with no pending balance. Mom was glowing, absolutely glowing, as if she hadn't just taken my dignity off a table and moved it to the back of the room. Melissa glanced over her shoulder at me. Her face had questions on it, but Mom pulled her closer for another photo. I sat at table 7 between a cousin who talked about fantasy football and an older woman who asked me twice if I was one of Linda's girls. Yes, I said the second time. Technically. Dinner was served 20 minutes later. The salad was limp. The chicken was cold. The sauce had separated into something that looked legally concerning. I ate the saddest piece of chicken I have ever seen and felt calmer with every bite. At the front table, Mom lifted her glass for a toast. To Brandon, she said, her voice thick with pride, who has grown into a man any mother would be honored to celebrate. And to Melissa, who is joining a family that knows how to stand together. Rachel, my older cousin, looked back at me during that part. Rachel was 42 and had always been the keep the peace person. She was kind, but her kindness used to come with a broom, sweeping everything under the rug before anyone tripped over it. She gave me a small, sympathetic smile. I didn't return it. Near the end of dinner, Mom stepped outside to take a call. She came back with her lips pressed tight, her smile smaller. Brandon checked his phone, frowned, and leaned toward her. Melissa asked him something. He shook his head too fast. I didn't need to hear the call to know what it was. A few minutes later, Mom walked past my table and hissed, "Did you do something?" I looked up from my water. "I sat where you put me." Her eyes narrowed. "Anna." "Linda," I said, matching her tone exactly. She glanced around to see who was listening. "We'll talk later." "No," I said softly. "You'll talk later. I'm done being talked at." She walked away with her shoulders stiff. I left before dessert. I didn't storm out. I didn't slam anything. I said goodbye to Rachel, nodded to Melissa, ignored Brandon, and went home. By the time I took off my shoes, my phone had 17 missed calls. 6 from Mom. 4 from Brandon. 2 from a number I didn't recognize. 5 from Mom again because apparently the woman believed redialing was a legal argument. There were voicemails too. Mom's first one was tight and whispery. "Anna, call me immediately. There is an issue with the venue, and I hope you did not create a problem out of spite." The second one was less controlled. "You had no right. No right. This was Brandon's night." The third one was my favorite. "Money doesn't make you important, Anna." I played that one twice just to appreciate the confidence. Brandon texted at 11:08 p.m. "What the hell did you do?" Then, "Mom said the payment didn't go through." Then, "I told you I'd pay you back." Then, "This is insane over a chair." I didn't answer. The next morning, the family group chat exploded before I had even finished my coffee. Mom posted first. "I am heartbroken that Anna chose jealousy over family last night. Brandon and Melissa deserve joy. But unfortunately some people cannot handle not being the center of attention." Then my aunt. "What happened?" Mom. "Anna punished her brother over a seating mix-up and created a financial issue with the venue. I will not share private details, but I am deeply hurt." A cousin sent. "Wait, was that why Linda was outside on the phone?" Another cousin. "I saw Anna move seats. It looked awkward." Rachel texted me privately before posting in the group. "Can you just let your mom have this one night? I know she can be a lot, but Brandon's engagement shouldn't become a war." I stared at Rachel's message longer than it deserved. A month earlier, I probably would have typed a careful explanation, softened every edge, and still apologized for making people uncomfortable. Instead, I wrote back, "Rachel, I'm going to explain once and I'm going to include proof. Please read it before asking me to keep the peace." Then I opened my laptop. I didn't dump random screenshots into the chat. That would have let Mom call me emotional. I made a clean file, date by date, payment by payment. I included the venue deposit confirmation, the catering receipt, the flower invoice, the printed menu card charge, and the final payment cancellation notice. I added screenshots of Mom's messages. Please don't bring money up tonight. Let Brandon have this. Do not mention the debt thing to Melissa. Brandon is already embarrassed. Can you cover it just this once? I'll have him send it back. Then Brandon's messages. I'll pay you back after the dinner. Everything's moving around right now. Please don't tell Melissa. She thinks I already cleared that. I debated whether to include dollar amounts from older transfers. Then I remembered Mom telling relatives I was jealous. I remembered Brandon calling it just a chair. I remembered the way Melissa had looked at me like she'd been handed a story about who I was before I ever got to speak. So I included them. At the top of the file, I wrote one sentence. I wasn't trying to buy a place in this family. I was paying for one they kept telling me I didn't deserve. I named the file. Since my seat was removed, so was my money. Then I dropped it into the family group chat. Under it I wrote, Mom, you made this public when you removed my seat in front of relatives and said the family table was for people who make you proud. You told everyone Brandon paid for a dinner that I helped fund. You used my silence to protect his image and your own. I canceled the final payment because I'm done financing a version of this family that edits me out. For once the group chat went quiet. Not a polite quiet. A dead quiet. Then a cousin wrote, Wait, Anna paid for the catering. Another one. Linda, did you move her seat after she paid for all this? Mom replied almost immediately. This is private. Anna had no right to put family business in the chat. I typed back. You put family business in the room when you humiliated me at the dinner. Mom, money doesn't give you the right to control people. Me correct. That's why I stopped giving it. Brandon finally appeared. Can everyone calm down? This is being blown way out of proportion. A cousin answered. Did you know she paid for it? Brandon didn't respond. Rachel called me 10 minutes later. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She sounded different. Smaller. Anna, she said. I'm sorry. I didn't say it was okay. She took a breath. I thought this was just your mom being your mom. I thought maybe she said something rude and you reacted. I didn't know she was lying. That's the problem, I said. Everyone calls it mom being mom, until there's an invoice attached. I saw the screenshot about Melissa. The debt thing. Yeah. Does Melissa know? I don't think so. Rachel was quiet for a few seconds. Linda is already calling people individually. She's saying you're trying to destroy Brandon's relationship. Of course she is. She wants everyone at Sunday dinner to clear the air. I laughed once. By clear the air, you mean pressure me into apologizing? Yes, Rachel said, and that honesty surprised me. That is exactly what I mean. I'm not apologizing. I know, she said. I'll be there. After we hung up, I got a text from Melissa. Can I ask you something without everyone else involved? My first instinct was to ignore it. Not because I disliked her, but because I was tired. Tired of being the documentarian of other people's lies. Tired of being pulled in only after the damage was done. But Melissa hadn't moved my seat. She hadn't taken my money. She had been lied to too. I wrote, yes. Her reply came fast. Did Brandon know you paid for the dinner? Yes. Did he owe you money before this? Yes. Was Linda asking you not to tell me? Yes. 3 little answers. No insults. No speeches. Just doors opening. A minute passed. Then she wrote, Why was I told you were jealous? I stared at the question for a while because there was no answer that didn't sound cruel. Finally I typed, because it was easier than telling you I was useful. She didn't answer right away. I added, I'm not trying to hurt you, but you deserve facts before you marry him. She asked for the messages that specifically involved her not being told. I sent them. Not the entire family file. Just the parts that concerned her and Brandon. She deserved truth, not a family grenade thrown into her lap. Her last text was, Thank you. I need to talk to him. Sunday dinner was at Mom's house because of course it was. Mom loved home field advantage. She could cry near her own kitchen island and make it look like the room itself was comforting her. When I arrived, there were already too many cars outside. More relatives than a clear-the-air conversation needed. Rachel was there, sitting stiffly at the kitchen table. Brandon leaned against the counter with his arms crossed. Melissa sat beside him, but not close enough for their shoulders to touch. Mom stood near the stove even though nothing was cooking. She had tissues folded in her hand like props. "Anna," she said, wounded before I had even taken off my coat, "thank you for finally coming to discuss what you did." I set a paper folder on the table. Brandon rolled his eyes. "Oh my God. More paperwork." "Yes," I said. "People seem to understand paper better than they understand me." Mom pressed her fingers to her forehead. "This is exactly what I mean. So cold. So calculated." "No," I said. "Calculated was moving my seat after taking my money." "It was not like that," she snapped. Rachel spoke before I could. "Then what was it like?" Mom looked annoyed that Rachel had chosen that moment to grow a spine. "It was a seating decision," Mom said. "I was trying to keep the night elegant. Anna has a way of making people tense." I pulled out the printed seating chart and placed it in the center of the table. My seat was originally at the family table. This version was emailed to me by the venue 4 days before the dinner because I was the contact person for the deposit. Mom's mouth tightened. I placed the final printed chart beside it. "This version moved me to the back." "That change happened after the venue sent you the draft, Mom. So no, it wasn't confusion." Brandon pushed off the counter. "It was just a seat." I looked at him. "Then why didn't you trade with me?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then scoffed. "Because it wasn't the time." "It was the exact time," I said. "Mom insulted me in front of your fiancé and our relatives. You heard her. You chose comfortable silence." Mom jumped in. "I did not insult you." Rachel's voice was quiet but firm. "Linda, I heard what you said." Mom turned to her. "Rachel, please don't pile on. You know Anna has always been sensitive." "No," Rachel said. "I know what I heard." I opened the folder again and laid out the catering receipt. "It was never about a chair," I said. "It was about being insulted at a table I paid for." The room went still. Mom laughed once, sharp and fake. "Money, money, money. You keep making this about money." "You made it about worth," I said. "Money is just how I can prove the lie." I placed the venue deposit beside the catering receipt. Then the flowers. Then the menu cards. Then the screenshot of Mom asking me to authorize the final balance. Melissa picked up the screenshot with careful fingers. "Brandon," she said, not looking away from the paper, "did you know Anna paid for this?" Brandon rubbed the back of his neck. "Mom said she handled it." Melissa looked at him. "Handled it how?" He glanced at Mom. Melissa's voice sharpened. "I asked Brandon." Mom tried anyway. "Melissa, sweetheart. Family helps family. It wasn't some dark secret." Melissa held up another screenshot. "Then why did you tell Anna not to tell me?" Mom's face shifted. For the first time, she looked less angry than cornered. "That was taken out of context," she said. I almost smiled. "It's a full screenshot." Brandon pointed at me. "You're loving this." "No," I said. "I hated every step that got us here." He shook his head. "You didn't have to put it in the group chat. Your mother told the group chat I was jealous and punished you over a seating mix-up. I corrected the record. You embarrassed me. You borrowed from me, lied around me, let Mom shame me, and then expected me to keep paying. I didn't embarrass you, Brandon. I stopped absorbing the embarrassment for you." Mom slammed her palm lightly on the table. "Not enough to be frightening. Just enough to demand attention. You had no right to air dirty laundry," she said. "You hung me out in front of everyone first," I said. "I just brought the laundry basket." One of my uncles made a noise like he wanted to laugh but valued survival. Mom shot him a look. Melissa placed the screenshot down and turned fully toward Brandon. "How much do you owe?" He stared at her. "Brandon," she said. "How much?" "It's not like that. That is not a number." Mom stepped forward. This is not the place to interrogate him. Melissa didn't look at her. Please don't answer for him, Linda. That landed harder than anything I had said. Because Mom could dismiss me as jealous, dramatic, ungrateful. But Melissa was the audience Mom had been performing for. And now the audience was asking for the script. Brandon muttered. I was going to fix it. With whose money? Melissa asked. He didn't answer. Rachel leaned back in her chair and said, Linda, you cannot take someone's money and then shame them for being there. Mom's eyes filled with tears on command. So now I'm the villain? After everything I've done for this family. I looked at her tissues still folded neatly in her hand. No one is stopping you from being a mother, I said. I'm just stopping you from using me as a wallet while treating me like a problem. She whispered. I was protecting the family. You were protecting Brandon's image. He's your brother. And I'm your daughter. For once she had nothing quick to say. I gathered the papers but left copies on the table. Here's what happens now, I said. No more emergency payments. No more secret deposits. No more covering Brandon's bills, Mom's mistakes, or anyone's image. If a vendor calls, they call you. If Brandon owes money, he handles it. If you tell people I'm jealous, difficult, or unstable, I send them the timeline. Not a rant. The timeline. Brandon laughed bitterly. So you're blackmailing us now? No, I said. I'm documenting myself accurately. Mom's voice went icy. You would choose money over family? I looked around the room. At the relatives who had believed the first version because it was easier. At Rachel, who looked ashamed but steady. At Melissa, whose engagement ring suddenly looked heavier than it had a week before. At Brandon, still waiting for someone else to make accountability less uncomfortable. Then I looked at Mom. You can call me family, or you can treat me like a backup wallet, I said. You don't get both. Nobody stopped me when I left. The aftermath wasn't some movie scene where everyone clapped and Mom admitted she was wrong. Real families don't collapse that neatly. They leak. First the group chat went quiet. Then smaller chats started forming without Mom controlling every word. Rachel posted one message in the main chat the next morning. Everyone should read the file before blaming Anna. Anna didn't embarrass this family. Linda did. A few relatives reacted with thumbs up emojis, which is apparently the emotional maximum for people who had watched me get treated like a folding chair for years. Some stayed silent. One aunt messaged me privately to say, I didn't know it was that much. Not I'm sorry, but it was closer than she'd ever come. The venue called Mom directly about the unpaid balance. Then the caterer. Then the florist because my card was removed from everything I could remove it from. Mom left me a voicemail saying, You're making me look irresponsible. I didn't call back. Brandon texted me 3 days later. I can pay you $200 next month. I wrote, Send a repayment schedule for the full amount by email. He replied, Why are you acting like a bank? I typed, Because you treated me like one. And then I muted him. Melissa didn't tell me everything and I didn't ask. What I know is that she postponed some wedding planning and asked Brandon for full financial transparency. I know because Mom blamed me for that too. You planted doubts in her head, she said in one voicemail. No, Brandon planted them. Mom watered them. I just turned on the light. A week later, Mom posted on Facebook about protecting your peace from people who weaponize generosity. She got 12 likes, 3 from people who had no idea what happened and 1 from Brandon. Rachel sent me a screenshot with no comment, just the little laughing reaction. That helped more than it should have. I didn't cut off every relative. I didn't block the whole family and disappear into a dramatic new life. I still talk to Rachel. I still answer polite messages from a few cousins. I still love people I don't fully trust, which is a complicated but real thing. But I stopped paying. That changed more than any speech could have. Suddenly, Mom's emergencies became smaller when I wasn't available to fund them. Brandon's promises became less charming when people asked him for dates and amounts. Family gatherings became simpler when no one could quietly upgrade them with my card and Brandon's name. Mom stopped tagging me in tasks disguised as affection because I stopped completing them. For a while I felt guilty. Not because I was wrong, but because peace had trained me to confuse guilt with danger. Every time my phone buzzed with Mom's name, My body expected a crisis. Every time a relative started a message with, "I know this isn't your responsibility," but I had to remind myself that knowing something isn't my responsibility is a complete sentence. The biggest change was internal. I stopped arguing with the version of me Mom sold to people. If someone wanted to believe I ruined a dinner out of jealousy, they could believe that. The people who cared had the facts. The people who preferred the performance were never my audience anyway. A month after the dinner, Rachel invited me for coffee. She apologized again, properly this time. "I kept telling you to keep the peace," she said, stirring her coffee even though she hadn't added anything to it. "I didn't think about who was paying for it." I said, "I was." She nodded. "I know." That was the first time someone in my family said it without making it smaller. Mom still hasn't apologized. Brandon still thinks I overreacted. Melissa is still figuring out what she wants, and I honestly hope she chooses whatever protects her future, whether that includes my brother or not. As for me, I kept the folder. Not because I plan to throw it at anyone again, but because it reminds me that I'm not dramatic for remembering. I'm not cold for having boundaries, and I'm not selfish for refusing to finance my own disrespect. I didn't leave the family table. I just stopped paying for a seat they never meant to give me. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.